So Kurdistan, certainly in the Middle East, plays a huge role in energy security. And when we look at the United States' perception of an energy security framework, certainly the long-standing alliance of it's had with the Republic of Iraq and with the Kurdistan regional government is key there. And now with the new deals which have just been signed in Washington this week, we see this as a strong step forward between the United States and its investment, looking at an investment of $110 billion over its lifetime in oil and gas development in Kurdistan region. Well, I see this investment as being really a strategic geopolitical plan of the United States. Of course, with the new Trump administration, we are seeing a decrease in international military deployments and ultimately plans to draw those down. But that is certainly being replaced by strategic investments in energy security around the world with American partners. So how Kurdistan fits into that, of course, is part of larger plans of the Trump administration. But we can certainly see that because there is previous history there of working together, both for military, for security, and for economic reasons, the position of the KRG as being a stable and reliable partner in the region, especially to shore up concerns about Iran's influence and instability, of course, in the wider region as well. I think it's a number of things. Of course, there is this security partnership where the US has supported the Peshmerga, also supported the SDF in Syria, in the fight against ISIS. And of course, that history is still very important to American decision makers. And as we're looking forward to future security threats and future problems and issues with terrorism in the region. But I think it also goes farther than that. If we look at this context right now, of things shifting in Syria, of course, in hopefully quite positive ways, with the integration of the SDF in security's future security architecture, and this green lighting of the new Syrian president, Ahmad al-Shara's administration by the US and support of that administration by the Gulf partners. We're also seeing things shifting in Turkey with the announcement of the PKK for disarmament. And so while there's a lot of uncertainty and always there's potential for challenges within that uncertainty in which direction things are going to go, this does put I would say the KRG in a quite advantageous position to reassert its role both in energy security in the region and as that's building up between Iraq and Turkey and between US interests there, and larger as certainly as the semi-autonomous center of the Kurdish people and the protection of the minorities that the US, of course, supports. So those are some of my thoughts. Absolutely. From the conversations which Prime Minister Barzani has just had in the US, I mean, there is a significant push towards supporting American business in the region. So I think that's something that we can look forward to. The last time I was in Iraqi Kurdistan, there were a lot of conversations around the withdrawal of US coalition forces. And while there have been announcements made about that, there has always been this recognition that there would be residual security forces left in Iraq, left in Erbil. And so there will continue to be this certain level of security guarantees and support for the development of the Peshmerga, for example, that would support business interests in the region. And then beyond that, of course, we have the new US consulate being built. This signifies, I mean, it is a huge symbol of US interests in the region. And of course, having built or in the process of building the largest US consulate, that shows that there are plans for continuing to develop those business relations. Well, as a symbol of US diplomacy, of course, it shows that there is great trust that KRG is a stable place to operate. It's a stable place to manage diplomatic affairs, to also be a center point in the larger region, and to be processing whatever visas and also business types of guarantees that happen through that consulate. What will the US gain? Well, certainly it will gain the strength of having Kurdistan as a partner. And when we look at these larger geopolitical dynamics, especially with Iran and then farther afield in Israel and Gaza, the fact of having a strong, stable, and historic partner in the region, in this part of the Middle East, is of national security importance. So what Kurdistan can get out of that, I think, is quite a bit, and the US also benefits from that. And as we are seeing the new Trump administration, the way that they are engaging in diplomacy, the way that they are engaging in international partnerships, is certainly more on a realist type of basis, insofar as that there really needs to be gains, whether that's security gains or economic gains out of those partnerships beyond just US military assistance or US foreign assistance. So I believe that the relationship is shifting in that direction, and for the KRG perspective, that can be a useful thing. Well, I think that there is a lot of work now to be done to make good on the many promises and the many conversations that were had this week in Washington, whether that is continuing to support KRG's economic reforms, continuing to support Kurdistan's autonomy and constitutional protections in Iraq, and beyond that, yes, I mean, we have a phrase in the United States of "put your money where your mouth is," and what that means is to really to back up this speech with action and with funding. So I will be interested to see how that funding now goes and gets distributed. But I would say that both on the business side with these new oil and gas deals, and with this tour that the Prime Minister has just taken, there is a lot of goodwill right now, and that really strengthens the pre-existing relationships that the government already had with the Trump cabinet. So I'll be curious to see how we go forward. Well, it was very telling that after Baghdad came out with the statement against these energy agreements as being null and void, that Senator Marco Rubio, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, came out in the Foreign Affairs Committee, and he made a statement completely in support of these agreements and in support of the US's larger partnership with Iraq, the US's larger support of Iraqi unity and the Iraqi constitution, and also the fact that the US has a differentiated relationship with the Kurdistan region and therefore has the ability to seek agreements with that region on the basis of that relationship. So I would say from the US side, we already see that there's a strong stance being taken here vis-a-vis Baghdad. But in order to ease the tension there, I think that it's important for the US to take a strong stance in support of the Kurdistan region, but also with the understanding that there is a larger partnership here between these two countries, and that larger relationship should not necessarily be undermined or cause tension through the kind of bilateral agreements that are taking place with Iraqi Kurdistan. That's a great question. What more can be done? Well, I think they can leverage this historic moment that we see of all of the dynamics that are happening regionally, with some very promising larger dynamics in support of Kurdish people around the Middle East, and Kurdistan region is in this special position of being a semi-autonomous region, having some level of constitutional rights that are protected. And I think there are ways perhaps that can be leveraged to the international community to address shortfalls in international investment in the region. And part of what will make that more and more attractive for international investors will be the security there, will be the ongoing stability. So I think there is certainly work to be done on that area, especially between business communities in different sectors. So we'll see what happens, but it is a special moment to take advantage of. Well, I definitely believe that the question of self-sufficiency is really important, and the question of the Kurdistan region developing more energy autonomy and developing economic reforms that really support both the creation and the distribution of energy in equitable ways. Of course, that goes into the internal politics between Erbil and Baghdad, which is not necessarily my area of expertise. But when we look certainly at larger patterns that are happening in the region, for example, in terms of interest in renewable energy, in terms of green technologies, I think there's so much room for innovation. And if there is both financing and interest to attract that kind of innovation to Iraqi Kurdistan, there certainly could be investors for it. So I would say there's a lot around economic agency and the extent to which Kurdistan can exercise that economic agency, no matter how much that might be constricted by the structures in which it operates, but to do so in ways which attract external interest and investment, that then Kurdistan would have more say over how that gets implemented, where it gets implemented, at what price, in ways that are really to its advantage. Well, I'll have to give my honest statement here that I'm not a specialist on Iraqi or Kurdish politics, and so I'm not aware of all the reforms that are being made and all the initiatives that the Prime Minister has been undertaking recently. But I can say in my visit to Kurdistan in November last year, I was really impressed to learn a lot more about how the government is putting investment into different types of development, whether that's in agriculture, whether that's in the technology and telecommunications sector. And I can say that I learned a lot from the colleagues that I met there. So certainly for the US relationship, it is important that there is some alignment there. Of course, that alignment may not always be a given. Things change very quickly in our geopolitical context, and certainly within the US administration. But I can say that there's a recognition of these long-term strategic ties between the US and Kurdistan region. And what I would be interested to see, frankly, is that there is, in the Prime Minister Barzani's recent visit, he met with a lot of Republican Congress people, as well as senators, and fewer people from the other side of the aisle, from the Democratic Party. And I think that might be an opportunity to pursue there, because there are larger interests in the US in the Kurdish region that go beyond the kind of traditional partnerships with the Republican Party. And so I would be really curious to see if there might be opportunity to develop the bipartisan support in the US for these different types of financial assistance and partnership with Kurdistan.